Hey everybody, how's it going? This is John Breeden. It is Valentine's Day 2020. We are one day removed from the Daytona Duels. That's right, the Daytona Duels were last night. Joey Logano won the first duel race, and then William Byron won the second duel race. Lots of exciting racing last night. I'm going to talk about it, recap the duels, and then preview all the on-track action coming up this weekend. We have the truck race tonight. We have the Xfinity race Saturday afternoon, that is. And then the Daytona 500, the Great American Race, Sunday afternoon. I'm here to talk about all of that as well as all the other news. And then at the end of the show, I'm going to answer your questions. That's right. If you sent me a question on Instagram, on my Instagram story at NASCAR Images, I'm going to answer it here on the show at the very end. So a lot to talk about, and I want to talk about probably the biggest story in racing coming out of the duels. And I'm not certain it's like the number one story. It probably isn't, but it should definitely be a top story, and that is Daniel Suarez is out of the Daytona 500. And I still can't even believe I said that, but he is in fact out, and he had to race his way in last night, and he failed to. And of course, if you watched last night, I'll briefly recap what happened. So around the halfway point of the first duel last night, there were some green flag stops going on, and there's these group chats that are out now between, I guess it's between the manufacturers, because all the manufacturers, they pit together now. You have the Chevys, the Fords, and the Toyotas. So I guess they all have their separate group chats, and they basically just talk about when they're going to pit. And so the Chevys had just pitted, and the Fords were out on the racetrack, and they were the leaders at the time. And the Toyotas had actually just pitted as well. So the Fords still hadn't pitted yet. Some of them were, I think, Almirola was in there, Logano, Keselowski. But the point of this is, so they're coming off turn 4, and Suarez is up behind Brad Keselowski. And to Suarez's outside was Ryan Blaney. And Keselowski basically waved his hand at the window, I guess down the backstretch or wherever it was, that he was going to come into pit. And when he pulled off the pace, he slowed up. Suarez tried to go to the outside, and Ryan Blaney wouldn't budge. And they made contact, and Suarez went into the wall, collected Blaney, and Suarez slid down through the grass. And if you know anything about Daytona's grass, it tears that front end of the car up anytime a car hits the grass, and his car was destroyed. And Daniel Suarez would be out of the Daytona 500. And very shocking, to say the least. I did not expect Suarez to be out of this 500. And in his interview, he was obviously very dejected. He was just devastated at what happened. And Ryan Blaney actually said over the radio that he did not get the memo that the Fords were coming to pit. So I guess had he got the memo, he wouldn't have been, crowding Suarez so much there on the bottom. He would have been on the outside, or I guess he would have came in a pit with them. I have no idea. But the point is that is ultimately what caused the wreck, a miscommunication on the Fords. And yeah, I was sad. I was sad watching it. I was sad waking up this morning thinking about it. I'm a big fan of Daniel Suarez, and it just sucks. And I mean, just whatever you think of Daniel Suarez, I mean, just look at the past 3.5 years of Daniel Suarez's career. 2016, he wins the NASCAR Xfinity Championship. Becomes the first Mexican-born driver to win a championship in NASCAR. He's on top of the world. And so, 2017, Carl Edwards leaves. He's retired. He's gone. So Joe Gibbs has an open spot. And he calls up Daniel Suarez. And his rookie year, I mean, to his credit, for a guy who had never been in a Cup car, he had a learning year, I would say. He had a decent season for somebody who's never driven a Cup car before. And 2018 came around, and he showed some improvements, but overall, kind of the same year. He showed improvements, but the results weren't exactly there. And it was virtually the same exact season he had the year before. And so, Mark Truex Jr. at the time was out at Furniture Row Racing. That team had shut down. So Truex needed a ride. So, of course, Joe Gibbs Racing said, well, I got a ride open. And so Suarez was out of Joe Gibbs Racing. So then 2019 would roll along, and he would get with Stewart-Haas Racing for 2019, of course. And last year showed some more improvements, but still did not make the playoffs, did not win a race. Definitely showed some improvements, though. And I thought, well, I know Cole Custer is coming up to the Cup Series, and chances are he's going to be with Stewart-Haas Racing. So I figured somebody was going to be out. It was either going to be Clint Boyer or Daniel Suarez, and they chose Daniel Suarez. And so Suarez was out, and he signed very recently with the Gaunt Brothers Racing team. And I thought, you know what, this is actually really good, because now he can go out here, he can prove himself once again. He can prove himself that he can drive, and then sooner or later, another team, a stronger race team will pick him up. And so, missing the Daytona 500, this is the last thing you wanted. Starting off a year where you are already trying to prove yourself, and something like this happens. Now, granted, it's not like Suarez was, running in the back, and, he wasn't even close to contention of making the 500. He had the spot. And for those first 20 laps, he was up in the top 10 at one point. It was like, I was pretty definite, okay, he's going to be in. And, simply put, he got in an accident. And it sucks. And it's really sad. And I don't really know what else to say about it. And seeing Suarez's interview, like I said, he was absolutely devastated. This is either going to really motivate Suarez and that team. He's going to have either the biggest chip on his shoulder, and he's going to come in and he's going to do everything he can to prove himself and just drive the wheels off that car. He's either going to come in and make a statement for the rest of this year, or, unfortunately, this might be like the straw that breaks the camel's back as far as, Suarez's his motivation, his drive. The frustration is obviously getting to him, but it's going to be a question of how does he use that frustration? Does he use it as a motivation, or does he fold under the pressure? And I certainly hope he doesn't fold under the pressure. I certainly hope he rises above and really proves himself. And it's not impossible. You look at a guy like Chris Buescher. Chris Buescher won the Xfinity Championship in 2015, and he got a ride with Front Row Motorsports for 2016. And I was like, why is he going with Front Row Motorsports? That was just, to me, it was not a fit for the defending Xfinity champion. And so, I mean, lo and behold, I mean, he wins. I mean, he won a rain-shortened race at Pocono, but he won a race nonetheless. And so the next 2 years, though, he spent with, I guess the next 3 years, he spent with JTG Doherty Racing. And he absolutely proved himself there. I mean, you remember last year, I mean, he drove the wheels off the 37 car. And he had a great season, and now he's with Roush Fenway Racing. And I guarantee you Chris Buescher is going to turn heads this year. And so he got in a mid-level ride in JTG Doherty Racing, and he proved himself, and he ran well in lesser equipment than other teams, and now he's with Roush Fenway Racing. And I mean, Roush Fenway isn't the strongest team anymore, but it is still a strong ride nonetheless. And like I said, he's going to turn some heads this year, and I have a feeling. So, for Suarez, to me, he's just got to do the exact same thing. He's got to go out here, he's got to prove himself, and, you know, soon enough, maybe he can be back in a top-notch ride. I certainly hope so. I certainly hope they use this unfortunate circumstance to their advantage. But nonetheless, it's unfortunate, it's sad, but it's how racing goes sometimes. So, Daniel Suarez is out of the Daytona 500, as well as 2 other drivers. J.J. Yaley did not make the Daytona 500, neither did Chad Fincham. And so there are 43 cars entered, and 40 cars will race on Sunday. So the duels last night, I don't even know what to say. I mean, I thought for certain these guys were not going to race how they raced last night. I thought we would see single file, which we did, obviously, but I thought for certain, well, they're going to run single file, and at the last lap, like, some guys are going to make some moves, some guys are going to try to maybe win, but other than that, like, everybody's just going to kind of settle because, you know, it's their Daytona 500 car, and they don't want to wreck their Daytona 500 car going for a win in the duels. I was wrong. I mean, there was side drafting, and there was 2 and 3 wide pack racing, hard bump drafting, I mean, blocking going on. I mean, it was just about everything you can expect from a normal super speedway race, and I was shocked. And I'm not complaining about it, obviously. There was some great racing last night. I was very surprised. And as far as Sunday goes, I still have no idea really what to expect. And why that is because, well, number one, as I mentioned on Sunday, this Sunday is just going to be chaos. There's going to be wrecks. There's going to be big ones. I mean, it's so hard to tell who's going to win Sunday. And number two is the duels last night were a night race. So we're going to be obviously racing in the afternoon, so it's hard to tell, you know, who's going to be good under the hot sun, you know, in a night race. It's hard to tell. I will say, though, that, I mean, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. looked really strong. And, I mean, he was up there. I mean, he was... I just can't even believe how hard he was racing. The fact that he was the Daytona 500 pole winner, and he's up there pulling the side drafts on Joey Logano with 3 laps to go. I mean, it was just crazy. And so, he looked really good. Obviously, Joey Logano winning. Kevin Harvick looked good in the second duel. Jimmy Johnson looked good in the second duel. It's just really hard to tell right now who has the best race cars. And I mean, it's not even really gonna matter Sunday, because like I said, it's gonna be calamity come Sunday. I mean, there's gonna be so many wrecks, and I don't even know. But I'll go ahead and review these duels here. So I didn't take any notes for these races, so I'm kind of just going solely off memory of these races. So the first duel Ricky Stenhouse Jr. led the opening laps, 10 or 15 laps or so, and he had some sort of debris on his grill, the usual superspeedway dilemma. He had some sort of trash on his grill, and, laps kept going by, and he's just staying out front. He didn't try to drop back and get the debris off, and, even Jeff and Mike were just kind of confused, like, well, why isn't he dropping back to try and get that off? It could cook his engine, but he stayed out for a while. It didn't end up being a problem. He came to pit road, I guess, and got it off. So the first 25, 30 laps or so, guys are coming in for pit stops. The first stop started around like lap 25. They just came in for fuel only just to make it to the end. And so, as I mentioned before, at some point in this, the Fords came to pit. Suarez tried to avoid the pitting cars, ran up into Ryan Blaney. They crashed. And so that was the only caution of the duel, was Suarez and Ryan Blaney. Ryan Blaney, by the way, obviously going to a backup car after that incident. His car was bandaged up. He continued the race, however, but he obviously not keeping that race car because it's pretty banged up. Suarez, of course, was out. And so they went back green, and for the final 20 laps or so, Joey Logano was up front. And he and Austin Dillon were trading the lead. Austin Dillon looked really good in this duel as well. And he was trading with the lead with Austin for a little bit. And then they got singled out with about 15 laps to go. And I thought, okay, that's probably where we're going to end, right? Like, that's going to be, Logano's going to lead. And it was Eric Almirola behind him. And I thought, well, that's how they're going to end. And I was wrong, because with about 10 to go, Ricky Stenhouse was coming up on the inside and side-drafting Logano. There was 2 and 3 wide racing with 10 to go. And Logano, though, was able to hold him off. And by about the white flag lap, Stenhouse had backed off going down the backstretch because he was just going to get out of that mess. And, Austin Dillon was up there, and Bubba Wallace had gotten himself up into the top 5. Brad Keselowski there as well. Brad actually finished 4th. And Joey Logano kept everybody at bay and won. Joey Logano won the first duel. That means he'll start 3rd for Sunday's Daytona 500. I'm very excited towards the end. I mean, I was just sitting there watching that last 10 laps thinking, my goodness, what are you guys doing? I know it's for points. I understand, if you win the duel, you get 10 points. Second place, you get 9. Third, you get 8, and so on through the top 10. But, I mean, to me, if I'm asked, well, what's more important, winning 10 points in the duel or, keeping your Daytona 500 car intact? I mean, to me, it's keeping my Daytona 500 car intact. But hey, I'm not complaining because it was a lot of exciting racing. So, Joey Logano won, and that was that. So, the second duel, by the way, the start of that first duel was actually delayed an hour by rain. And the initial start time is supposed to start at 7 o'clock, and the race didn't start till, I believe, 8:20 or 8:30. And yeah, they fired up the engines and they got ready to pull off pit road, and it started raining. And all I could ask myself was, why didn't you guys decide to jumpstart the start of the race like you do at other racetracks? And you know how they'll speed up the start time by 20 minutes or whatever if rain is coming. And for whatever reason here, they didn't do that, but I guess maybe they didn't know the rain was coming or whatever. But anyways, yeah, so that's the story there. And so Duel 2 started around like 9:45. And in this duel included the outside front row sitter, Alex Bowman. And Jimmy Johnson was in this duel. William Byron was in it. Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, Matt DiBenedetto was in there. Some other names. And so this duel pretty much had the exact same story as Duel 1, when I think about it now, in that they started out with some early pack race in the first couple laps, and then they single filed out, and then they had pit stops around lap 29, lap 30. And so the Chevys actually came in first. The Chevys included, obviously, Alex Bowman, William Byron, Jimmy Johnson, Kurt Busch, some other guys. They were leading at the time about their pit stop, at the time around their pit stop, which was around lap 25, lap 30. And they came in, and the Toyotas stayed out, which included, obviously, Kyle Busch, and I think Eric Jones was in there as well. And the story here was they were going to try, somehow, they were going to try and stretch it as long as they could, because they were actually starting to catch the Hendrick cars and try to put them a lap down. So they were doing their best to stay out there as long as they could. And then an accident on the backstretch. J.J. Yaley, who was another guy trying to race his way into the Daytona 500, and wrecked. The exact same story as the first duel. And he was trying to block Corey LaJoie, who had a big run on the outside. Yaley was trying to block, and he just got put up in the wall. And that was the end of Yaley. And the guy he was racing in this one was Timmy Hill, which, by the way, those guys going at it, I forget what point it was in the race. It was like, it was at the very start of the race, but those two guys were all by themselves. They had lost the pack, but these two, they were side drafting, and they were just bouncing off of each other, trying to get that transfer spot in the 500. I thought that was so awesome. Watching those guys battle it out for they only showed it for 2 or 3 laps, but it was fun to watch. And just goes to show what, how much these guys want it. So anyway, that was the end of Yaley, and getting towards the end of the race, Harvick was out front. Harvick looked really good in this duel, and Matt DiBenedetto was in fact right behind him, and following them was a big row of Chevys. It was William Byron, Kurt Busch, Jimmy Johnson, and they were running single file here until about, here with about 5-6 laps to go, they're running single file. And what I was thinking at that point is, okay, so this is going to be the calmer duel, right? And once again, I was wrong, because with 3 laps to go, William Byron goes to the outside on the backstretch, has help from Kurt Busch, pushes past Kevin Harvick to the lead. And what I really liked about this, my big complaint about super speedway races are the fact that these guys, they always wait too late to try and make their moves. They always wait until half a lap to go before they try to make the move for the win. And I'm like, that's just too late. Granted, there have been a lot of last lap passes at super speedways, but there have been a lot of super speedway races where the guy out front just sits there, and then with a half a lap to go, he's got to make maybe 1 or 2 blocks, and then that's it. I mean, you've got to get together, you got to form a run earlier, and that's what they did. William Byron got a big push from Kurt Busch. With 3 laps to go, he got by. Jimmy Johnson got to second. There were 2 and 3 wide behind him. Lots of good racing going on. They came to the white flag. Harvick had the inside formed up again. And they went into turn one, and I thought, oh man, Harvick had the inside on him, and he wasn't going to be able to block, but he got another big push from Jimmy from the top, and he held him off. William Byron won Duel 2. I guess technically it is his first checkered flag in the Cup Series. Of course it doesn't count because it's a non-points race, but nonetheless, William Byron won. It was a lot of fun. Lots of good racing, and there you go. Jimmy Johnson finished second. Lots of fun racing last night. I have no idea what to expect for Daytona besides a lot of pack racing and a lot of wrecks, and that's pretty much what we're going to see Sunday, I have a feeling. But yeah, there's your duels, and before I get into my Daytona 500 preview here, I want to talk about Brad Keselowski and Denny Hamlin, and Joey Logano as well. I know this is kind of old news now, because this was Sunday and now it's Friday, but when I did my show and I was talking about the incident, my show was before this whole interview broke, as well as the tweet. So, as you've probably heard by now, Brad Keselowski was not happy with Joey Logano for his block in the clash. Basically said, too many people doing too many stupid blocks, and you just do nothing but wreck, and it never works, and I don't know why people do it. And Denny Hamlin tweeted him, well, didn't tweet him, but retweeted the video and said, correct assessment, bring this up in your team meeting, obviously referring to Joey Logano. So I just wanted to make a point here. I mean, Brad being mad about blocks, I don't really understand why he's, obviously I understand why he's upset, but, it made me think, why is everybody blocking everybody? There are so many times we go to super speedways and there are these incidents. And especially with Brad, you go back to, I think it was 2018 at Daytona where he got wrecked by, I think it was Stenhouse, and he got involved in a big wreck. And I think last year in Coke Zero practice that William Byron tried to pull a block, and Brad said, "I'm not lifting." And that was his whole quote there, just let all the drivers know I'm not lifting. And so, there's so many other incidents, but, I'm not sure why is everybody blocking? Why are there so many wrecks with blocks? Well, and the answer is, these guys, they're professional race car drivers, but at the same time, they're not perfect. And everything is happening so fast when you're in that race car that, it's a human error. And, you can look at those incidents with Brad that I mentioned. You can look at what happened Sunday. Look back to Daytona, the Coke Zero 400 last year with Austin Dillon and Clint Boyer. Tony Stewart and Michael Waltrip at Talladega some odd years ago, 7-8 years ago. It happens. And I think, here's the thing. I think, especially when you're leading, and you've got this lead, you've been, say you're running single file for 20 laps. It's 20 to go, you're the leader, and you've been leading for 20 laps, and it comes down to the white flag, and there's still single file. And then all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, you see this guy just get this huge push to the inside. You didn't even see where he came from. He was running back in 7th, and he just came out of nowhere. Your initial reaction is going to be, oh crap, and you're going to try to pull to the inside. And so, especially when you wait for that long, when you're sitting there 20 to go, 19 to go, 18 to go. You're sitting there in the lead, and you know it's coming, and you know you got to be ready for it. And then when it comes, I mean, you just can't. I just don't think drivers can help themselves. So my point is that for Brad, I don't really think there's a lot you can do about it. And it is what it is. People are going to put blocks on people. People are going to wreck. And that's just going to be how it is. And I'm not necessarily sure if it does happen more often than before, but I really think back to some of these races, and I'm like, you know what? Like, it really does happen a lot more. Like, the past 2-3 years, I feel like it's happened a lot more than the previous 2 to 3 years, if you know what I'm saying. But, I mean, who knows? Maybe I'm wrong, but it at least feels that way. I'm not sure why. I know, I feel like we have some more aggressive young drivers out on the track than maybe we had before. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's inexperience. I have no idea. And, I mean, that doesn't even have anything to do with this incident. I mean, you're talking about Joey Logano, Kyle Busch, and Brad Keselowski. I mean, they're not inexperienced. They're definitely aggressive for sure, so maybe it's that. But I don't know. But as far as Brad goes, I don't know. If I would just tell him to get over it, I guess. I guess it's just going to keep happening. It is what it is. But there you go. So, the Daytona 500 is, of course, this Sunday. And here, I want to go ahead and lay out my idea of what's going to happen Sunday. So, this race is going to start, and it's going to start with a lot of 2 and 3 wide pack racing, I have a feeling. It's going to be a lot of good pack racing early on through the first 10-15 laps. And then it's going to single file out for a little while. You know, they'll probably single file out around like maybe lap 15, 16, and the first stage would end at lap 60. So, probably single file out until then. And there'll probably be one caution. Like, the first caution will probably come out around like lap 30, maybe. Allow these guys to pit. And they're going to pit so they make it to the end of stage 2. It's stage 1, more like it. And they're going to run until the end of stage 1. And the last lap of stage 1, there's going to be a wreck. There is almost every year, 9 times out of 10, there's a wreck at the end of the stage because they're trying to go for the stage win. That's going to be your first, may not be a big one, but it's going to be a wreck. And stage 2, I think, is going to be kind of just, okay, we're trying to get to the end of stage 3. I think stage 2 is kind of the middle part of the race where, you know, it's still a little bit early, but, you know, we're not, it is almost halfway. We're at the halfway point, so we are getting a little more aggressive. But I see stage 2 being very calm, and probably a wreck at the end of stage 2, I can imagine. I imagine there'll be, maybe not a big one like I mentioned, but there'll be a wreck at the end of stage 2. And then stage 3 is going to start. And stage 3, I mean, that's when everything's going to go absolutely insane, I have a feeling. They'll be 2 and 3 wide. The first big one is probably going to be around like 35, 40 laps to go. That's when you're going to see a big one. And, I mean, you're going to see it around then because it's like, well, there's obviously time left, but it's crunch time, so we need to get going. And everybody's going to realize that, and they're going to start to push a little bit, and somebody's going to push the needle a little too much and cause a big wreck, I have a feeling. Probably going to be a block, as Brad Keselowski mentioned. It's probably going to be somebody blocking somebody, and that's going to be the first big wreck. And as far as like the last 35, 30 laps of this race, I expect like 2 or 3 more big wrecks. I mean, it's just going to happen. And it may even be an overtime finish. I don't know. It might be. But probably like 2 or 3 more big ones there at the end. So my point is, the first 155 laps are going to be exciting, don't get me wrong, but they're going to mean absolutely nothing to what the last 45 laps are going to mean, because those final few laps, I mean, it's just going to be crazy, I have a feeling. I mean, listen, like I said, I thought the duels were going to be calm races. And what we got was these guys were racing for the Daytona 500 win. And so there's no way that, you know, the Daytona 500 is going to come, and it's not going to be what we've seen this weekend. So that's my prediction for how the race is going to go. It's going to be chaos in the last 35, 40 laps or so. And so my prediction, and as I mentioned, it's very difficult to pick somebody for a race where you know it's just going to be chaos out there. And there are obviously a lot of favorites. A lot of people, I think, are probably wanting Jimmie Johnson to win the Daytona 500. Their heart is probably telling them Jimmie Johnson. Fans, their heads are probably telling them that either maybe Kyle Busch is going to win his first 500, or Denny Hamlin, who is, I think, is probably the odds-on favorite this weekend. Just the fact that, you know, how good of a restrictor plate driver he is, and the fact that he won it last year. You know, obviously William Byron won the duels last night, so there's some hope there as well. But I'm going to go ahead and give my pick. And my pick for this year's Daytona 500 to win the 2020 Daytona 500 is Martin Truex Jr. And this is kind of, I would say it's kind of an outside-the-box pick, because Martin Truex Jr., not known as the best restrictor plate racer of all time. In fact, I don't believe he's actually won a restrictor plate race. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. No, he's not won a restrictor plate race. But Martin Truex Jr. last year had the most wins out of any driver. And, you know, 2 years before that, won his first championship in dominating fashion. And he's pretty much, you could pretty much say Truex has done it all besides win the 500. I guess, well, let me take that back. He hasn't won the Brickyard 400 yet, but, I mean, he's won a championship. He's won, you know, 7, 8 races in a single season before. I mean, he's been on fire the past couple of years. And as far as the Daytona 500 goes, you obviously remember the 2016 500 when he came within an inch of winning behind Denny Hamlin. And then 2017, he was up front and ran out of gas with 2 laps to go. So, for me, I think Martin Truex Jr., if he can avoid all of the calamity on Sunday, he's going to be hooked up with the Toyotas, Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, Eric Jones, some very strong race cars. And if he can get hooked up with them, I think he's going to be in good shape. And I have a feeling this is Martin Truex Jr.'s year. I mean, Martin Truex Jr., he's kind of went under the radar going into this year. Like, everybody's really talking about Jimmie Johnson and obviously Kyle Busch. Can he win his first 500? And, you know, some other stories as well. But, and not a lot of people are talking about Truex. So, I think he's kind of flown under the radar going into Sunday. And he starts 15th. And so, I think Martin Truex Jr. is going to come out the Daytona 500 champion. Get revenge for what happened in 2016 and 2017. He's going to get his first Harley J. Earl trophy. So, that's my prediction. Martin Truex Jr. wins the 2020 Daytona 500. Alright, so some quick Xfinity and truck thoughts here. Trucks, of course, are tonight, the first race of the season at Daytona, tonight at 7:30 on FS1. Matt Crafton comes into the year, the very controversial three-time defending Cup champion. Obviously, won the championship last year after finishing second at Homestead with 0 wins. And like I said, a very controversial champion. But nonetheless, he's back this year, of course. All the familiar faces are back this year. Johnny Sauter and Brett Moffitt, Stuart Friesen. A lot of those guys are back. And my prediction for this truck race, it would be hard to bet against Johnny Sauter, but I actually am because, I mean, Johnny Sauter is an excellent super speedway racer, but the trucks, like the Cup race, are often very, very wild. And so I just see maybe something happening to Sauter, getting caught up in a wreck. It's not easy to just pick the odds-on favorite for the Daytona win. So I'm going to go outside the box a little bit. I'm going to go with Stuart Friesen tonight. I think Stuart Friesen is going to win Daytona. Last year, Stuart Friesen had 2 wins and had a very solid season and much improved. I mean, 2018 was good for him as well, but he was finally able to get his first win last year when he won Eldora. Then he won at ISM Raceway and competed for a championship. So I think Stuart Friesen gets 2020 off to a good start, and he's going to win the truck race tonight at Daytona. And so for the Xfinity Series race, and that is going to be on Saturday. And believe it or not, no Cup drivers, as far as I know, are running this race. Obviously, unless you count A.J. Allmendinger, but A.J. Allmendinger, of course, retired. A.J. Allmendinger is in the field. You've, of course, got Justin Allgaier in the field. You've got Noah Gragson coming back for his second year in the Xfinity Series. You've got a bunch of other faces. Ross Chastain. And Ross Chastain is, in fact, who I'm going to go with for this race. I think Ross Chastain, he won the July Daytona race last year, and he's got a lot to prove. I mean, Ross Chastain had an awesome 2019, winning some Truck Series races, winning some Xfinity races, competing for a truck title. He's now got a ride with Colleague Racing, and I think he's set out to prove a lot this year, so I'm going to go with Ross Chastain. I think he's going to win Daytona. And yeah, he's in the field as well. Obviously, some new faces in the Xfinity Series. For Joe Gibbs Racing, Harrison Burton behind the wheel of the 18. And, sorry, let me pull up who's in these cars here. My mind just went blank for a second. I need to see who's in this. Oh boy. Can't you guys tell I'm on the computer here? I'm messing up everything. Let's see. I knew it was Harrison Burton. I don't know why. The other name is escaping me here. I don't know why. I just had it a second ago. Oh, Riley Herbst. I apologize. Riley Herbst is in the 18 car, and Harrison Burton is in the 20 car. Big mistake there. I apologize. But nonetheless, they are in the field for Daytona tomorrow afternoon. And so, yeah, we'll see what happens, but I am going with Ross Chastain. So that is my Xfinity and truck thoughts. My Daytona 500 thoughts as well. And so it's time for me now to get to these questions here on my Instagram story. You can follow me at NASCAR Images on Instagram. Let's see here. Okay, this person here asks, who you got on Sunday? Well, I mean, I already made my pick, so I guess I'll substitute this as somebody that I don't think is going to win and why. So, I don't believe Jimmie Johnson is going to win because, I mean, I know it's his last year and I know everybody really wants the guy to win, but the reality is that while Jimmie Johnson does have 2 wins in the Daytona 500, it seems like every other time he's out there on a plate track, he gets involved in a wreck. And so, I mean, I certainly hope it doesn't happen, but I expect Jimmy to probably get caught up in a wreck at some point on Sunday. Hopefully I'm wrong, like I said, but he has a tendency to get caught up in incidents on super speedway tracks, so that's why I don't believe Jimmy is winning Sunday. This person here asks, who is your favorite driver? Well, my favorite driver is Chase Elliott, and before Chase Elliott was Jeff Gordon. So when Jeff Gordon retired in 2015 and Chase Elliott took over the 24 car, I stuck with the 24 of Chase Elliott. And now he's number 9, so there you go. This person here asks, what changes should be made to super speedway racing if it needs any to you? Well, no, I actually don't believe super speedways need any changes. I mean, if you watched the racing last night and if you watched the races on Sunday, I mean, everybody loved the racing. And I loved the racing as well. I thought the racing was awesome. So, I mean, the drivers probably aren't a fan of it because they get in wrecks, but I mean, if the fans love it, I mean, to me, I think it's fine. So, no, I would not make any super speedway racing changes. I guess if I could make one choice, I would do away with single file racing completely, but I don't think that's ever going to happen. But no, I would not change anything to super speedway racing. And the last question I have here is, after Daytona hype, what do you expect from the new road course short track package at Phoenix? Well, I guess we'll wait and see because, you know, I know they're going to lower downforce on short tracks and road courses to try and obviously closen up the competition. And I know that was a big complaint at Phoenix last year, is that, you know, you couldn't pass, and fans hated that Phoenix fall race last year. And I mean, I guess because usually that Phoenix fall race is, you know, one of the more exciting races of the year, and it wasn't all that exciting last year. So to me, I guess we'll have to wait and see. I mean, I know they're going to lower downforce. I know they're shrinking the size of the spoiler. Hopefully there's more passing in the corners, I guess. I guess I'm definitely hoping for that. I know that was also a big complaint at Dover. Dover last year was worst offender to the passing in the corners. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, hey, if they're saying closer competition, I guess we're going to get some closer competition this year. So I'm looking forward to it. It is the championship race this year, so it is kind of it's a big deal. So we'll have to wait and see, though, but I'm hoping for the best on it. And so, all right, everybody, that's going to wrap it up for me today. Make sure to follow me on Instagram at NASCAR Images. Follow my main account at JohnBreeden9. Twitter at John_R_Breeden. I'll be back Sunday night to review the Daytona 500. And that is it. Talk to you later.